Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sister Maria. So, who else in our virtual room can feel the love? Who else can feel the love? I'm so inspired to be here, so inspired to feel the love, the strength, the courage, and the empowerment that has been shared today and in all of the days that have come before us as well. So look, we're at the end of a long day. So before we dive in, and my aim is to inspire you, but first, if you need to stand, take a moment to stand and stretch. And I'll invite you to take a few deep breaths, particular kind of deep breaths. Take in a deep breath and breathe in the love that we have shared in this virtual room of ours. Hold it in, and as you breathe out, let's breathe out that love from our hearts into our community, breathing it out. Breathe in the love into your heart. Hold it there for a moment. And as you breathe out, let that love shine back into the world. One more time as we breathe in, into that heart space. Breathe in the love, breathe in the strength and the courage we've shared today. Hold it there for a moment. And as you breathe out, shine that light of love out from your heart. I hope that feels as good for you as it does for me. Wow, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you, Gertrude and the whole team, for everything you've done to bring us all together today. As I was preparing for this talk, I was listening to one of my favorite audiobooks, which is Daring Greatly by the amazing Brené Brown. I'm sure many of you have heard of her. And in that book, she shares the story of her TED Talks. When she speaks of her second TED Talk, she shares a particular story, and that story really resonates with me right now. Her second TED Talk was at the main TEDx conference, and she was scheduled as the last speaker of this conference. And she spent 3 days listening to all of these amazing and inspiring people get on the stage before her, thinking, I have to come after this. I'm the one who follows this up. And she shares that with each speaker, she got a little bit lower in her seat, thinking, oh, who am I to follow that? Over the last few days, I've been feeling the same way because, gosh, what an amazing, amazing group of women. What an amazing set of stories that we've shared. And what's so interesting for me is that there have been so many common themes. We have women here from all over the world, and yet the themes that come out share so much in common. There's a really strong theme of the tough times and how those tough, difficult times can help us actually find our purpose, can help us be stronger, can inspire us to make a difference. The very strong theme of love, including how our love for others in our lives, our children, our families, our communities, can be the thing that inspires us to actually step outside that comfort zone and to do what we're here to do. There's a theme of the importance of self-love and self-care, and in particular, how difficult that can be for us as women to prioritize. How so often as women, we put the needs of everyone else ahead of our own. And of course, a theme of the power of story. So the story I'm going to share with you is the story of burnout. Very much a first world problem. And yet, it's crazy, this thing, burnout. If you Google the word burnout, you come up with 112 million hits. It's crazy that we live in a world where something like burnout is even a thing, let alone such a prevalent thing. So my story is about burnout, but also how we create it, how we can get beyond it, and about the fundamental role of well-being from a broad perspective for us as human beings. And most importantly, how we can and how we do recreate ourselves. We do not need to be defined by our past, by our experience, by the roles that we have taken on. We have the power to recreate ourselves and to create the life we choose, not just for ourselves, but also for those around us, our communities. And we have the power as a community to recreate the world that we live in. We live in a very exciting time for that. So speaking of story, there's an amazing quote from a very inspirational woman called Amy Purdy, which I'd like to share. She says, if your life were a book and you were the author, how would you write the story? So I'd actually like to ask you, each of you right now, to think for a moment. We're about to enter the next chapter of our lives. It's a chapter called 2021. If that was a chapter of a book and you were the author, how would you write it? And what would your life be like at the end of that 12 months from now? You might even want to take a moment and reflect and make some notes as we go on. With that destination in mind as well, what are the shifts that we want to make and who do we want to be to bring that story into reality? We'll come back to that before the end of this talk. But I'd like to share with you another quote that's one of my favorites. Albert Einstein once said, there are two ways that we can look at life, as though nothing is a miracle or as though everything is a miracle. The more that I learn about us as human beings, from a physiological and biological point of view, from a psychological point of view, from a neurological point of view, from a spiritual and emotional point of view, the more I know each and every one of us is a miracle. Every single person in this virtual room is a miracle. Miraculous things are happening in your mind, in your brain, in your spirit, in your energy, in your body, even at the cellular level. Every single moment, you're a miracle. And as the miracles that we are recreating ourselves every moment. Every moment we're recreating ourselves at those levels through how we think, through how we feel, through how we respond to the world, through how we act. So creating our own lives, that is something that happens whether we like it or not. We're all self-made, right? The problem is that most of us, we're not really aware of that. Most of us, we create our lives, we create ourselves by default, by the roles that we've taken on or that we've just assumed or that we've been taught, put in a position of, through our stories that we've picked up along the road of life. We do have the choice to be intentional, to create ourselves intentionally. And so that's what I want to share with you. Now, we've had a lot of talk about the year 2020. For some, the best year ever. For some, a very challenging year. I would actually like to talk about the year 2012 for a moment, because to me, there's kind of life before 2012 when I was living by default, and there's life after 2012 when I started to learn how to be intentional in my living. Because 2012 was the worst year of my life. This is the theme. It's like it's darkest before the dawn. Anyone who knew me back in 2012 would look at me and think, wow, she's just got it together. She's got a great life. She's got the loving husband. They've got the good house, 2 healthy children. Yes, absolutely in that top 1% of the globe when we're talking about quality of life and income and all of the rest of it. And she's got this great career and everything seems together. She's got it sorted. But the internal experience was very, very, very different. Internally, I was broken. I could not walk down the street without bursting into tears. I was completely and utterly burned out without resource. I could barely get through each day. And I didn't realize it at the time, but that was a situation that I had entirely created myself. With the benefit of hindsight, I did what many of us as human beings do. We take our subconscious beliefs and allow them to shape our reality. If I were to wind the clock back a few years, when I was a child, my father had a law firm, and unfortunately, he went bankrupt when I was a preschooler. My mother had 3 children and she was raising them with nothing. We'd lost so much. We were in a very fortunate situation, though, through some circumstances, that we were able to stay living in the same house. So although by global standards, we had a very comfortable life, as a young child, what I knew was that almost all of my peers had things, were able to do things, were able to have experiences and all of the things they had in their houses that I did not have access to. And that formed at a very, very young age a belief that I am not good enough. Now, that is one of the most common limiting beliefs in the world. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. So I reshaped this. I burned out. And it's a very, very slippery slope. So burnout happens not intentionally. It happens step by step. And it happens because of stress. It happens because we prioritize other things and other people, and we don't look after our self-care. We don't make sure we get enough sleep. We're not looking after our nutrition. We're not looking after our exercise. Usually when we're stressed and burned out, we reduce our connections with other people and lose touch with our social support networks. All of the things that would help us persevere and actually get through the tough times. And that's exactly what happened to me. What happens as well is when we're burned out, we're in a state of chronic stress. And in stress, our mind becomes very, very tunnel visioned. We're just focused on what it's going to take to survive. And so what that means is it means that we actually lose access to the part of our mind that allows us to find solutions, that allows us to think creatively and allows us to access our intuition, which is why if you know anyone in this state, they find it hard to connect and they feel trapped. And it's very, very hard to see a way out. So the good news is that there is a way out. There absolutely is a way out. But the thing is that we need a really, really big why. As human beings, we're wired to recreate whatever is familiar to us, even if it's hurting us and the people around us. And we've heard so many stories that have touched on that. So we need a very strong why. For me, I had 2 young children who were the most important thing to me in my life, and I was hurting them. And I missed so many of the little signals about the impact that my stress-filled life was having on them, that my inability to find the time just to play with them because I felt I didn't have the time was impacting on them. And that all came to a head when I found myself in a shouting match with my 5-year-old son. That's just wrong. And it was like a slap in the face because I knew that actually I'd done that to him. And that's when I knew that I had to change. So I shared in a talk in our session on Saturday what I learned about that. Because what I started doing is I used that balanced goal-setting process to actually put my life in order. I left my job and I actually moved into my own business as a coach so I could help others from getting onto that slippery slope. But at the same time, I put in place a set of balanced goals for myself that gave family, my own health and well-being, and my own self-care the same priority as my business. And the interesting thing is that I found that by prioritizing those areas as my well-being boomed, my business started to improve, even when I wasn't doing anything differently. And that really hit home one day when the boss of the client called me up and invited me out to lunch. He bought me lunch. We had this great lunch and I walked away with $15,000 of business. I was like, what happened there? How did that happen? What it is our well-being. It's not just about filling our cup so we can better serve others. People know. People know when we're stressed. People know our energy. Our energy expands out beyond our body and people pick up on it. People can either feel inspired by our energy and well-being or they're dragged down by it. And it affects all of our relationships and interactions. If we want to create a ripple effect in the world that's going to make a difference, then the first place to look is our well-being. And I have some very, very good news for you. Because when I started to discover this, I thought, well, what does it take? What is it really that contributes to our well-being? And it's not just the stuff we think of automatically. Nutrition and exercise is vitally important, but there's actually 10 other areas. It's about looking after our head, our heart, our emotional well-being, as well as our health, our physical well-being. If you would like some more information on those 10 areas and a self-assessment resource so that you can actually look at where you're at, email me today and I will send you some tools I've put together. I will share my email after this presentation. So with all of that in mind, I would actually like to share with you something that you can actually put in place right now. I'd invite you to think back to the notes that you made at the start, where you looked at, well, how do I want to write my next chapter? I'm going to ask you to think about what is one area of my life that I would actually like to start improving right now. There's no better time to start moving in that direction. And I'm going to give you quickly 5 steps to help you to do that, starting now. The first one is think about your why. Why is it important that you make this shift? And that's the benefits, not just for you, but also the people that you interact with. What are the ripple effects of you making this improvement? Make it powerful, because we need a powerful why to help us overcome that inertia that we have as human beings. Number 2 is be really clear about the what. What is that change? And what is that going to look like and feel like and be like once you make that change? The third one is the most important. It's about building small habits to help shift the change. Willpower does not cut it for lasting lifestyle change. There's so much research on that. 45% of the decisions we make every single day of our lives are automatic. They are habits. We make them automatically, often without even realizing it. And that is what underpins our lifestyle and what we are able to accomplish in life. And the key to changing habits is make the changes so small that they're no-brainers, that they're so easy to do that we can't hold ourselves back. Make them frequent, every day. Connect them to an established part of your daily routine. Reward yourself for doing it, even if it's simply by acknowledging yourself, I did it, well done me, and keep doing it. Because even for the easy stuff, habit change takes time. As you know, the absolute minimum for the easy habits is 3 weeks based on the research we have on this, and it can take as long as a year or more, depending on what the habit is. And it's so important to reward and acknowledge yourself every single time you do even the smallest thing towards the person you want to be. Something we do not do enough as humans and as women is acknowledge our wins. And it does not matter how big or small the win is. A win is a win, and your brain, your mind, your well-being love the wins. So collect them, collect them. And the final thing is just keep doing it. Repeat, 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 and review from time to time so that you can acknowledge and recognize yourself for just how far you've traveled, because change is an incremental process. We don't notice the growth unless we look back to see how far that we've come. So I would just like to leave you with 2 things. Number 1, whatever else you do after this conference, after the summit, after today, please start practicing collecting those wins and rewarding yourself by acknowledging yourself. Give yourself that love. And number 2, as Mel Robbins likes to say, if you have the courage to start, you have the courage to succeed. So what can you start? What small tweak would you like to make in your life to go to that next level for yourself that you can do within the next 24 hours? Get started and have fun with it. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share that with you all. It is an absolute honor and privilege to be here. I'm just going to post my email address in the chat. And if you're interested, just email me at that address and I will share you my 10 pillars of wellbeing self-assessment tool and some resources around that, as well as the balanced goal setting approach in case you want to apply that balance into your life as well. Thank you.